Welcome to Weekend Night Live, hosted by Samuel Jacobs Abbey, where we play music, talk shows, and interviews on Be Inspired Podcast Network. Stay tuned and keep your dial on www.beinspiredpodcast.com. Don't forget to stay connected, be inspired, be unique, and be different.
Hello, my name is Quan Green, and I would love to share some products that I found that are very beneficial to not only my body, but I'm sure that they would really help your body. I found out that a lot of us are impacted and we need to be detoxed, and I found some wonderful products that will safely detox you and help you to eliminate the waste and feel good about yourself. We also have products that will help grow your hair and give your skin more vibrant radiance and suppleness and help with wrinkles. I also have products that will help with joint pain as well as help you to lose weight. These products are all natural, therefore you don't have to worry about putting something in your body that's going to add problems to the problems that you may already be facing. So if you're interested, please give me a call at 706-426-1471, or you can email me at preciousjewel492@gmail.com. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Wamaya, Wamaya, don't you? 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 Wamaya, Wamaya, don't you?
Okay. Hi, my name is Samuel Jacob Sabi, and I'm the host of Be Inspired with the Weekend Night Live with Samuel Jacob Sabi on Be Inspired Podcast Network. I just want to invite you and your family to tune in every Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time and also at 7 p.m. GMT for those across the Atlantic Ocean to tune in to listen to inspiring voices, to listen to our interviews, individuals who have excelled in different forms of life. We bring them so they will be able to share their stories, and we know that their stories will have an effect on you. On Being Inspired Podcast Network, our mission and our goal is to empower people from around the world who have attained a certain height and sharing their stories to make a social change implication. Social change is very important, and it is important that individuals, families, society, and leadership spend time to acquire knowledge and skills to help formulate policies and ideas to help shape their communities. That is the more reason why I want to invite you again to tune in every Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time and also at 7:30 GMT on Be Inspired Podcast Network. You can catch us up on www.beinspiredpodcast.network, or you can also join us on our Facebook at Be Inspired Podcast Network, and we can have fun. Once again, tune in and have fun. God bless you.
You were all enjoying that peaceful, beautiful music, Yesu a Tsunami. And I'm sure your excitement will even be elevated once we start our conversation. So, communication, as we all know, dominates our daily lives. Whether it be at work, at home, abroad, or in social settings, that it is important to realize the importance that language has in our world and in how we interact with each other. Now, the United States, in particular, pride itself on being a melting point of culture and histories. Its immigrant population boasts people from all over the world, bringing more languages and tradition to this country than I could possibly fathom about. Yet, in my personal opinion, there still seems to be doubt towards the assimilation of language besides English and a lack of prioritization when it comes to learning new language. Despite that many advantages that accompany multilingualism. Because I don't want to take the wind out of my guest, I don't want to go into details, but when we start our conversation, we'll be able to determine whether monolingual or multilingual is the most appropriate thing for an individual, and what are some of the benefits that are associated with this background. To help me discuss this in thorough, today I'm very privileged that Emmanuel Amegavi Sosu, a 26-year-old Ghanaian who had completed an advanced level in philosophy, art, and linguistics, and also possessed a diploma in aviation, particularly airline and ticketing, profiling passengers, handling, and airline customer service. He is a linguistic activist with proficiency in French and English. He also has a basic knowledge in German, and Spanish. But more importantly, he speaks both Ewe and Twi. As a youth development enthusiast, he is an active member of the Junior Chamber International Ghana, in which he served as the 2017 General Legal Counsel for JCI Dansoman, and currently is the incumbent local president for JCI McCarthy Hill, which is a relatively new chapter established. Mr. Sosu is also the founder and the president of Français pour tous, which means French for all, with a passionate ambition of making Ghana an English-French bilingual state through his agenda termed as Agenda 2050-50, which stipulates that by the year 2050, at least 50% of Ghanaians speak and write basic French. The initiative has led him to engage both senior citizens and politicians, as well as government officials. Notably, he has had an opportunity to discuss these initiatives with the former president of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Ajekun Kufuor. He has also engaged the former ambassador of Ghana to Russia, the Republic of Russia, in the person of His Excellency Kojo Alabo. Also, the incumbent Minister of Sanitation in Ghana, Honorable Cecilia Abana Dapa, Deputy Minister in charge of Secondary Education, Honorable Yao Osei Edu Chum, and the likes. In fact, he has also engaged the current Vice President of the African Union Commission in the person of His Excellency Thomas Kwesi Kwori. In the course of his advocacy, he had other features on some international front. He was on Radio France International on 2 occasions to report the state of French language in Ghana, together with the Eastern Regional Minister, Honorable Eric Kwache Dafo. He had written 2 articles to his credit, which talk basically about Ghana becoming a bilingual state and French in Ghana. The one-man show, which was published in some of the leading online platforms in Ghana, such as the Ghana Web, Ghana News Online, etc., etc. So, guys from around the world, I know you are eagerly and patiently waiting for our conversation to begin. I am very excited today that our topic is going to be drawing a contrast between monolingualism and multilingualism. And so, folks from around the world, help me welcome to the studios of Be Inspired Radio my friend Emmanuel Amegavi Sosu. Emmanuel, welcome to Be Inspired Radio.
Thank you very much, Doc, for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, and we are very happy and excited that you find some time to pass by to teach people the importance of this subject. As a tradition, we always pride ourselves by engaging our guest and offer him or her the opportunity to introduce himself. Even though I read a tall profile of you, there are areas that I'm sure we haven't covered. And so, why don't you take a moment to tell us a bit about yourself and what inspired you to get into where you are now, and then we can pick the conversation from there.
Thank you very much, Doc. I salute all your listeners across the globe. Very good evening to those listening to us on the Greenwich Meridian time. Good evening to them, and those at the US side. A very good afternoon to you all. Of course, as you might have said rightly during the introduction, my name is Emmanuel Amegavi Sosu, a very humble guy, very passionate and about knowledge acquisition and determined to make a difference. About my profile, I think you have said it all. Let's leave the rest for our listeners to dig deep into it and then find out for themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this with us. So now let's begin. I always want to ensure that our listeners have the best of information in order for them to make, how do you call it, to make a judgment call, especially when it comes to the areas like language. So the topic for today, we want to look at, I want to draw a contrast between monolingualism and multilingualism. Now, what do you mean when we said monolingualism and multilingualism?
All right, Doc. Let me start by saying that etymologically, the prefix monolingualism, so you have the prefix mono in there, is the same as unilingualism, so that is the same thing, they are synonyms. So the prefix there refers to singular, a single. So it refers to a system where people speak and conduct their day-to-day activities in only one language. So briefly, that is what we mean by monolingualism or unilingualism. Contrary to multilingualism, which can also be termed as plurilingualism or polyglottism, as the prefix rightly indicates, it also refers to a system where people conduct their day-to-day life activities in more than two languages, so more than one language, so to say. So the two systems are uh, sharply, you know, in contrast. So monolingualism refers to a system where people conduct their day-to-day activities in only one language, and then multilingualism or polyglottism, or better still, plurilingualism, refers to a system where people speak, more than one language. So that is basically what the system, I mean, the topic depicts.
Got you, got you. And thank you for that clarification. I'm sure uh, people are following, and they certainly do understand the both the mono and the multi, the same as in everyday English word. Now, so what are the dynamics of both technology terminologies uh, to their human capital in a given country? Because I mean, who cares? That's what people will say. So, will you be able to grant us the opportunity to, as it were, understand the dynamics with these terminologies?
Yes, Doc. One thing, one interesting thing about language is that uh, language is part of a culture, and you view the world based on the language you speak. So the two terminologies, as defined earlier, have great impact on human life. I will be raw by giving you a very typical example. People that speak only one language are quite intolerant, view the world in a singular manner. These kind of people find it difficult to accommodate other cultures because, of course, they don't have any other view for the world apart from what their language uh, might prove it. And so, if you take a typical person like, say, let me go hard on you a bit, Doc, your own president Donald Trump, who speaks only English, and you realize that he's kind of radical, and his posture is always intransigent. He doesn't want to take he doesn't want to give in to a second thought. The same thing applies to his rival Kim Jong Un. Sorry, I'm drawing it quite political, but it's very important for us to understand the topic. If you take Kim Jong Un, who is also a monolingual, you realize that he's also, towing the same line as, His Excellency Trump. Now, if you take the president of France, for instance, who is open, you know, it is because he speaks, apart from the French, which is original language, he speaks what? English, you know. So such people view the world in a francophone way and in an anglophone way. So these kind of people are quite open, tolerant, and always welcome, they are welcoming, and then they are ready to listen to uh, views, diverse views. So, in a nutshell, the impact the monolingualism or plurilingualism might have on a given society is that society that speaks only one language views the world in one way. A society that speaks many languages are welcoming, open, and ready to accommodate people from all walks of life. So, of course, you might agree or disagree with me, but that is what it is.
Got you, got you. So, well, so one of the listeners just mentioned, sent me a message and said, well, he thought that uh, the Kim you referred to, the North Korean leader, studied in Switzerland, and so for him to be very successful, to have studied in Switzerland, he will either speak English, French, German, or Swiss. And so if he has that background, then the contrast you put need clarification. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, yes, of course. You see, the Koreans are attached to their roots, and you realize that in his day-to-day activities, he does not speak in, he doesn't give in. He realizes that he's always giving an interpreter, you know, even as in as much as he has that background, that Eastern background to have studied in Sweden. Of course, I know, of which I know, he doesn't give in to speaking a different language apart from his. So he holds on to their culture, which is the North Korean culture, and he speaks only his language. Scarcely will you see him, and of course, I have not so far seen him expressing himself in a different language apart from his. Maybe if he does that in the behind the scenes, that I can tell. But of course, I know he has studied in Switzerland, but he does not practicalize whatever he might have acquired by way of language, you know, when he studied in Switzerland, because in his dealings, he's always been attached to a North Korean language.
Got you. So what we're gonna do right now is that we will listen to a documentary, and then when we come back, we will dive into other areas of work that Mr. Sosu is doing, particularly with Frances Potos. Is that the way to pronounce it?
The is Français pour tous.
You see, I am using English phonetics to pronounce it with.
Yes, so it's Français pour tous.
So, guys, you see the reason why we need to have this. Well, by the way, I speak different languages, not French, but I understand French too. Anyway, just for you guys to laugh. Anyway, let's listen to this quick documentary about the importance of multilingualism, and then when we come back, we will continue with our conversation. So stay put and let's listen to this.
So it's very common to assume when people talk about language that everyone speaks a particular language and speaks it well. And this assumption comes from large countries with large dominant languages like English in the United States, or Russian in Russia, or Chinese, or Mandarin in China. So if you have a large country, everyone's supposed to learn the large language. And if they don't, it's their problem. But if you think more deeply, and if you look at the history of human society, it's in fact much more common for people to speak two or more languages. And if we look at that from that angle, we realize that monolingualism, when someone speaks only one language and uses it most of the time, is more of an aberration rather than the norm. So in a way, the way sociology and linguistics have positioned themselves is looking at the aberration and treating it as the norm. And so obviously, it's important to think about what the consequences of bilingualism. And lately, there's been a lot of new research which shows that bilingualism gives people significant cognitive advantages. So let me give you two examples. One has to do with a recent study which was done in Florida. Florida is, of course, where everybody goes when they turn 70. So there are a lot of really old people in Florida. And a lot of these people live in assisted living and nursing homes. There was a study which they did in one of the nursing homes where they looked at about 800 subjects, asking whether or not they grew up bilingual. And they discovered that the likelihood of having Alzheimer's is 5 times less in people who grew up bilingual than in monolinguals. So that's not a bad result, especially now that everyone is trying to live longer and they've figured out how to deal with heart disease and cancer. So we might all end up in a nursing home. And it's not a bad thing not to have Alzheimer's. So another example comes from the other end of life and has to do with what's called wonder babies. This was a study which was done a few years ago in Trieste, which is basically at the border of Slovenia and Italy. So there are a lot of Italians and there are a lot of Slovenians, and there are, of course, a lot of mixed marriages. So what they did was they took 3 groups of babies. All the babies were 7 months old, so there were a bunch of Italian-speaking babies, a bunch of Slovenian-speaking babies, and a bunch of Italian-Slovenian babies from mixed families. They showed those babies various puppets, and then they switched the situation. And typically, when a 7-month-old baby is used to a particular setting and the situation switches, it takes them a little while to regroup. So it turned out that 7-month-old Italian and 7-month-old Slovenian babies would get used to the puppy appearing on the right, and then when the puppy would appear on the left, they would continue looking to the right as if nothing had changed. Whereas the bilingual babies very quickly would turn their head and notice that the puppet has changed its position. So again, an indication that all other factors being equal, there was something that made those babies more advantageous. And these are just a couple of examples indicating that people do really improve when they speak more than one language, especially if that happens from birth or at least in the first 5 years of life. Doesn't mean that everyone has to drop everything, and if you're 51 years old, start learning that language, that will help only marginally. But if you were born in a situation where 2 or more languages are spoken, or if there are languages that you were exposed to as a child, that certainly gives you an advantage. The question is why? And I'm going to give you one of the possible hypotheses, which is very rapidly being explored in different fields of these days. The idea is that the control of languages has to do with what's called executive control, which is your portion of cognition that is responsible for attention and the distribution of tasks. So let's say if you're driving a car, you spend a lot of your energy and a lot of your memory resources into looking at the road and ignoring what's happening around. So the reason we don't want to text when we're driving is that this will distract us from keeping attention on the road. A lot of energy is spent on not paying attention to things which are not related to our driving. Likewise, when you have 2 languages or more representing your brain, when you speak one, a lot of your energy and a lot of your memory resources go into suppressing the other language, which is constantly present in your cognition. And precisely because you're so experienced as a bilingual or multilingual speaker at suppressing the other languages in your representation, your executive control is better. And the way you exercise it way more than, let's say, a monolingual speaker does. And that leads to significant cognitive advantage. Obviously, there are different shades of bilingualism and multilingualism, and so once we discover that there are cognitive advantages, there are all kinds of questions that people ask. One of the questions is whether or not it's better to speak 3 languages than 2. At present, we don't see any significant advantage in the presence of 3 languages as opposed to 2. Another question has to do with whether or not it's better to introduce 2 languages sequentially or simultaneously. People have been very worried about raising bilingual children because the worry is that bilingual children have smaller vocabularies in each language than monolingual children. And that's kind of obvious because there are 18 waking hours in a day, and let's say 9 hours you hear language X and the other 9 hours you hear language Y. So of course you'll hear half of the information that you'd hear if you were just a monolingual speaker. So up to age 5, we do find that bilingual children have smaller vocabularies in each of those languages, but eventually they catch up. So I don't think that this would be a significant worry because this is not something that is going to last. And so it's important to just keep doing that. The argument for sequential bilingualism as opposed to simultaneous bilingualism are not terribly serious. And it looks like simultaneous bilinguals are better at certain tasks compared to sequential bilinguals, but sequential bilinguals are better at other tasks. And so the jury is still out as to which of those 2 is better. What matters is the amount of exposure and not the order in which the languages were introduced. And then finally, people often worry about the role of literacy in bilingualism and multilingualism, saying that, what's the point of learning a language which doesn't have literacy? Let's say if you're speaker of Hmong living in the United States, and there's a large Hmong community in Minnesota. The Hmongs kind of look down upon their language because they don't see what the use of it is. There is no huge literature. And in English, of course, you've got everything from Shakespeare to Quentin Tarantino, and you want to use all that. But literacy is secondary to language, and there are millions and millions of speakers who speak languages with no literacy or with just the oral tradition, and they still have significant knowledge and significant cognitive advantages. So the presence or absence of literacy in a particular language is not a deciding factor in determining whether or not you want to raise your child bilingual or monolingual. The disadvantages have to do first with the smaller vocabularies which show up in the beginning, and like I said, that usually catches up around age 5. The other disadvantage may have to do with the unequal distribution of languages. One language is significantly weaker than the other. You will see that there will be some kind of a transfer or interference from the stronger language to the weaker language. So these are probably the two main factors that people bring up. One of the big issues in understanding bilingualism is what the input should be for bilingual or multilingual speakers. For example, if a child grows up in a family where the mom speaks language X and the dad speaks language Y, should they all be speaking X, or should they all be speaking Y, or should it be one parent, one language? Until recently, the idea had been one parent, one language. So if your mom speaks Chinese and your dad speaks English, the mom should only speak English, the dad should only speak Chinese. That's a really difficult model to follow up on, and it only happens in an ideal world. So basically, the notion that we've followed lately is that it's just good to have as much exposure to a particular language as possible. And then the question is, of course, whether or not there should be language X spoken in the family and language Y spoken in the society. And this is where, again, the importance is in the input. The reason that we have a lot of minority languages whose speakers start losing them is that the societal pressures are much stronger than the pressures of the family. And so if the family can just increase a lot of input by, let's say, taking a person to the country where this language is spoken as the main language, this is the best. There was a very nice study on Finnish spoken in the United States by Helena Halmari, who noted that people who grew up in the United States speaking Finnish in the family but did go to Finland every summer were much stronger in their Finnish than people who only learned Finnish in the family and were exposed to English. So basically, the crucial word is INPUT, input, and that's what matters.
Alrighty, guys. So welcome back to the studios of the Inspired Radio, and I am sure you enjoy yourself. Emmanuel, I'm sure you followed closely to the study that was shared by my good friend who is also a professor, and he did this study, and so I asked her permission to share this with my audience and most people who are listening. Just giving me thumbs up that it was a good one. So now let me ask you, Emmanuel. In her speech, she had mentioned that multilateral are also able to see things from a different cultural standpoint more easily than monolinguals, resulting in the spread of multiculturalism. So, what is the significance of having to be a multi language speaker?
Yes, look, I can't agree more to that than to say a very thank you, she's done well. And of course, that is what it is. Uh, People who speak, like I said earlier on during the previous question, people who speak more languages, okay, they are able to even their ability to process information, okay, is 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 clear. It's a clear indication that they they have an open mind, okay, as compared to someone who speaks only one language. you realize that when you take the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, for instance, you know, all these people preach globalization, they preach uh, 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 tolerance, okay, because they see the world in so many ways. They have a taste of what it feels like to be a francophone and live as a francophone. They have that feel of, of an anglophone and the way an anglophone will see the world and the way he will live by it, you know. So it's as a Spanish, how you view the world and how you go by in your day-to-day activity. So it's like one person, but has a general view of how things go. So such people are very tolerant, you know, they accommodate, very accommodating, and then they are ready to give in because francophones are, for instance, believed to be argumentatively lovers. You know, they like debating, they like disagreeing, or they are not understanding. So such people, if you are dealing with a francophone, you are an anglophone dealing with a francophone, but you have a francophone culture as an anglophone, you'll be able to deal with this person successfully as compared to someone who is an anglophone who sees only the English, yet dealing with the francophone. Obviously, you realize that there will be divergence. There will not be understanding, and of course, this is what we are fighting against. We want people to have a fair and then very diverse view on the world. And I'm sure this is the only way we can move forward as a people. As we are preaching the globalization in our day-to-day lives, I think this is the best way forward, having a general view of how things go.
Got you, and and I thought you did explain it well. So now let me ask you. So now tell me what inspired you to establish uh, French for All, otherwise known as Français pour tous, right? What what inspired you or pushed you into this agenda?
Yes, look, thank you very much. I think we are narrowing down the discussion to bilingualism. You know, this is also a multilingualism, but this one is bilingualism. Uh, I have always had this desire to leave a legacy as an individual. I have always wanted to be a problem solver. And how best can I do this? I can only change the world by acting. And what I'm best at doing is, is language. So I realized that in my country, Ghana, where I live, the country is surrounded by French-speaking countries. And you agree with me that being bordered by French-speaking countries and as an Anglophone country, we are we are found, you know, it's like we are hooked up, you know, in between them. So the best way to live as Ghanaians is by studying a bit of French to adapt to the English and to be able to do it, communicate effectively, trade, and then facilitate the regional integration. And so this has been my quest ever since I had this sense of multilingualism in me. So this is the reason why I came out with the concept of choose. But let me also state that the concept came out in 2015, you know, when Ghana hosted the GCI Africa and the Middle East Conference, where I was made a chaperone to all the francophone delegates that attended the conference. So from there, I realized the difficulty my Ghanaian, my fellow citizens, you know, encountered, and also the Francophones that also came who can only speak the French, difficulty they encountered. So that also inspired me and pushed me to quickly accelerate the process of pushing the agenda. So that is basically why the concept of Français pour tous, otherwise known in English as French for all, has come into existence. Okay.
Wow, that's great. So, Francais Potique, now let's what is the vision and the mission? Because I'm trying to narrow the conversation to somewhere. I know, and folks, just give me a few moments. I'll come back to you because a lot of people are asking questions, but I want to get this straight. So, what is the mission and the vision? And let's combine it to the impact that your organization have had on the society as of now?
Yes, the mission of Français pour tous is to promote French in the Anglophone countries within the West Africa. And so all the Commonwealth countries within the West Africa, our mission is to make sure that they are bilingual, you know. So that's basically what it is. And then the vision is obviously make sure that by the year 2050, at least we would have a West Africa that will be bilingual. And so that is it. The impact. I would like us to look at Canada, for instance. You know how how the country is, like the dynamism of the country. I would also like us to look at US because, of course, it is not declared as a bilingual state. I mean, but there are states in there that speak Spanish, and so that gives US that fair ground to make Spanish a second language. And so, if you look at countries of this nature who are giving a second language a chance, you realize that it is for a good cause. And so, for West Africa to be bilingual, you can imagine how it will boost, you know, our regional integration that the ECOWAS are always been promoting and championing. You can imagine how it will boost the diplomatic ties, you know, amongst the member states. You can imagine how a bilingual West Africa would foster, you know, trade relations and boost economic ties. So these are profit and the impact it will have on the region.
Got you. So, folks, I know you are all eager to ask your questions. I know the questions are pouring in. Now, the first question that is coming, and it's coming from Togo, and it's coming from Kofi in Togo. And Kofi's question is this. Hey, Mr. Sosu, thank you. It's good. You know, in here in Togo, everybody speaks English. And so sometimes it's interesting that you travel to English countries and nobody speaks French. Why do you think that happened? Because I've been to Nigeria and nobody seems to understand uh, English. I've been to Ghana and those from the Volta region area, yes, they understand. But those in the Middle South, like Kumasi, Accra, they don't speak French. Why is French not an important component to be included in the curriculums in Ghana?
Yes, but to respond to this question, let me take the advantage to note that Ghana, in as much as it's a Commonwealth country, happened to have signed itself on the International Organization of the Francophonie, which is the OIF, back as far back as 2006, and that was done by the then Minister for Foreign Affairs, who is currently the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nabel Kwankufado, who did that and signed Ghana onto the International Organization of Francophonie. 12, approximately 12 years down the line, 2018, just this last month, he declared Ghana's intention to transition from the associate member into a full member state of the Francophonie. So that basically means that Ghana, on paper, has been made a bilingual state. Of course, he declared it there that he's poised to making Ghana a bilingual country. And so you realize that an astute diplomat as he is, he has that command over both the English and then the French language, and he knows the benefits he has. He has accrued from this practice. And so, as a senior citizen, he has decided to make sure that the current and the future generation, have a feel of what it is to be a bilingual. So, it is a step into the right direction. As to why the Anglophones are not able to speak French. The Great Britain, they are partially conservative. Okay, so they always hold on to what is theirs and promote it. So you realize that they are not interested in Amegavi. They are not interested in giving the chance to an alternative, language. But I think in as much as we are preaching the globalization, it's now beefing up things. Countries are beginning to wake up, and I'm sure as our agenda stipulates by the year 2015, the story line will change.
Got you. Another question coming from the Gambia, and it says here, uh, it's interesting the question that the earlier person asked, because I was going to say a similar thing, but the other way around. My question is, it turns out that people who speak multi languages are a little tolerable, and they are able to look at things from specific cultural perspective. If this is so true, then why is it that the benefits of multi or multilingualism, it's not being expounded properly?
Doc, come again with the question.
So the question is that if indeed the people who speak multi languages are tolerable and they are able to look at things from different perspective or different angle of thought, I mean the same thing that you've been saying a while ago.
Yes.
The question is that then why is the world or countries lacking to talk about the benefits of being multi language?
Yes, Doc, Africans are multilingual. This is because we have our own dialect. Every African country has so many dialects, and then Africans, if you take Ghana for instance, where I speak, there are so many indigenous language dialects. So I for instance speak my native language away, and then the tree. And so this in itself has already made me a bad. But you realize that nobody has championed the cause. Nobody, it has not been a talking point. No one has championed it. Is because I am doing this in Ghana that we are having this conversation. Had I not started anything of a sort, we wouldn't have been doing this debate at the first place. So I believe it's done on us, okay, as the current generation to take, our destiny into our own hands, because any decision we take now is binding us. It's to us to either change the storyline or maintain it, and obviously we are going to be victims. So the world, you don't expect the world to talk about it because no one has been championing it. And so in your own country, Gambia, where I am looking forward to coming, bringing the Français pour tous, which will be Français pour tous and Gambie, I am sure would have a good time to explore and then do better things.
Sounds good. It sounds good. So, and this is also coming from here in the United States. In fact, it's coming from Springfield, Ohio, and it says that. So, on what basis did Ghana decided to become a full blown member of the Francophone countries? What is the essence?
The essence is that, like I earlier said, Ghana is known or is termed as the gateway to the West Africa. In the entire Africa, French is the second language. I mean, uh, widely spoken apart from English. So he's of the view that if Ghana should have uh, a second language, of course, we are drawing inspiration from some of our world leaders. If you look at the late Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, if you look at Mohammed Ibn Chambers, His Excellency, of course, he is the special representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations within the West Africa and the Sahel. If you look at His Excellency Emmanuel Bombandi, if you look at His Excellency Thomas Kosikoti, who is currently the Vice President of the African Union Commission, you realize that all these people, and of course, not forgetting the current President of the Republic, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, you realize that they have been given the chance at the international level because they have uh, that command or they have that bit of bilingualism. They have what it takes to deal not only with Anglophones, but also with the Francophones. So, of course, it is widely accepted at the UN, for instance, the secretariat, the true secretariat is leading the course there at the executive level is the English and the French. And so we have the view that Ghana being the gateway of the West Africa and having uh, uh, seen how far those who took it upon themselves to be bilingual, how far they've gone, we have the view that if you should toe that line of giving that platform and the benefit to all Ghanaians to study the French language in addition to the English language, to do us a great privilege and put Ghanaians at the world stage and then give us, more opportunities at the international level. So that is why I am sure the president has decided to make Ghana a bilingual state.
Got you, got you. And this is coming from Robert in Australia. And Robert' question to you is that does speaking different languages affect the way bilinguals feel and think?
Yes, indeed. This is a very strategic question.
Yeah, yeah.
Indeed, one thing about bilinguals is that because they speak more than one language, their cognitive functions, they process information slowly. They don't draw conclusion quickly because they weigh options. They think in one this the, in the first language, take it to the other language. If they speak more than two, then you realize that they even end up exhausting all the possible means before they're able to draw conclusions. So such people are quite slow in terms of metacognition as compared to a monolingual who goes straight to the point because he has seen it. That is what he knows, one language. So he just goes straight to the point and then draw conclusion. But the tricky point is that monolinguals are not able to identify their shortfalls quickly after taking decision because that's the only way they view it as compared to a multilingual, for instance, who, after weighing all the options, even if he takes a decision and he realizes that he still analyzes, he can still come out with a different option, because he has a different way of seeing things. So that is the sharp contrast you have in there. But all in all, multilinguals will at the end of the day present a greater chance of deciding accurately as compared to monolinguals.
That's a very good answer right there. Another question. The questions are just pouring in, and this is coming from Liberia, and it's coming from Joseph, and in Liberia. And Joseph's question, similar to what was asked earlier on, but Joseph said here, when multilingualisms or bilinguals talk, do they mentally translate from A to B or B to C?
Yes, I think it's relates to the initial question. The way we process information as multilingual, for instance, is quite different from the way monolinguals process the information. If you speak English to me, for instance, if it is something that requires analysis or thinking, then you should be ready to give me enough time, because once it is for us to make a decision on, I would have to exhaust all my languages. I mean, the possible outcomes of that decision in diverse cultures, because who talks of language talks of culture. So the impact it will have on the francophone, for instance, outweigh that option. The impact that decision will have, or how an anglophone will see the decision I've taken, I would have to weigh that option. How a Spanish will see that decision and how he relates to it, I would have to view that. I mean, view that angle too. So of course, it gives us the chance to take time and analyze things. And so that is the only, should I say, it's an advantage in this regard. But you have to be ready to accommodate our slow nature. That is how I should put it. Because obviously there should be a translation. If it is for us to make a decision on critical decision, we have to analyze and then weigh options before taking decisions. So that's how it goes.
Got you, got you, got you. I know, folks. I know our time is almost up, and but the conversation is getting more interesting because the questions are coming from all angles. This is coming from Kojo, and Kojo is in Spain, and so you see the questions are coming from all over the world, and it says this: when children are introduced to two languages simultaneously, how does it affect their development? One, does it delay their speech? And two, do they end up with a smaller vocabulary in each language?
Yes. Uh, Indeed, to go straight to the point, it affects uh, their ability to quickly be vocal, because uh, they pay attention to both languages from the scratch. And so, in as much as they end up majoring in one, it still retards their ability, or retards their ability of speaking fluently that language, or mastering it to the core. Uh, of course, also their vocabulary to necessarily have effect on it, because if I'm learning two things at the same time as compared to someone who's learning one thing, the one learning one thing will definitely have uh, 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 the chance, or would have that stance, in that language as compared to someone who is learning two at the same time. Obviously, has that has some negative effect on them. But and when they grow, they end up majoring in one, and then use the other language as alternatives.
Got you, got you, got you. Uh, so this question is actually coming from Lucy, from the United Kingdom, and then Lucy said, uh, "Please, I need a very honest answer from you. I have tried couple of language softwares like Bubble, Rosetta Stone, just to be able to learn a second language, particularly French. It's a struggle. I mean, I consider it waste of money because I have not been able to pick it up. Now, is it because of my age? I am 43 years old, that my brains are so rigid that they cannot accept a new concept of language, or it is the software that is not a good software. But the ratings on the softwares are so high. I need a very honest answer from you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I think let's link it to the age factor one and then the environment. Uh, w- um, when you are, first of all, is the need to study French die? Is it, do you see that indispensable to your executive activity? If yes, obviously you will give it a full attention. Secondly, the best way of learning a language is by practicing it. So if you are studying French or learning French online, for instance, after the online activities, you must get someone with whom you will be communicating. And I think that is the best way of mastering the language. The age factor counts a lot because as you are old and you are now a family person, um, you are in you are in active life. So definitely, you didn't have that time. Even as you are studying online, calls are flowing from left and right. You are thinking of what tomorrow will be like for you, the work. So the day-to-day life pressure is on you already. So that wouldn't enable you to have a calm mind, be able to study, and then speak the language. So these are the two antecedents. If the age counts, and then the environment. So these are the two things. But I'm sure it is not too late if you indeed see the French as a tool that would add up to your life and make you have a greater chance of succeeding in life. I think you should focus on it and then give it more attention. I think it will be of help.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, guys. I know our time is far gone. We are 5 minutes into our time. But before we wrap it up, so now let's come back to your organization again and its vision. And can you share with us? So, what is the way forward for your organization, and what should we expect going forward?
Yes, Doc. Trying to convince people to do something they don't really know much about is quite difficult. But of course, I am happy the concept has been accepted by quite a chunk of authorities who see the better part of what uh, multi or bilingualism they set to have on the country at large. And so Francais Couture has organized a lot of activities already, and more are yet to come. We always organize quizzes for the basic schools, and then we have even come up with a French day, which we normally do on Fridays, where everything is done, all the activities in the school is conducted in French, from the canteen to the classroom. And so this is one way we think we could speed up the process. And very soon we'll be coming up with a symposium on the state of the French language in Ghana. Now that the Ghana has almost been made a bilingual country, but let me speak categorically that less than 2% of the population speaks French, and that is to be lenient. I mean, that is when I'm lenient enough to even give that assign that percentage to what it is. But as it is now, I am sure more people are buying into it. We are also facing um, deficiency in French teachers. And so reports uh, published by the TV3 network some time back indicate that the system lack at least 30,000 French teachers to be able to make French language a compulsory subject. And so all these things are challenges, but the way forward is that we should be able to solve that deficiency that the country is facing by way of French teachers, which we have put measures in place to make sure that it's solved. And so we are engaging the government in how to, and of course we have started that process already. That was why we met with the deputy minister in charge of secondary education the other time, and they are ready to collaborate with us. But more is still to be done to be able to make French a compulsory subject. Of course, the government has already made this known on so many occasions, but to the extent that even the education minister has signed a linguistic pact with the International Organization of Francophonie, and so all these things are factors that should push us to do more with the French promotion, but the reality remains the same. We must take the bull by the horn and make sure the right thing is done by solving the deficiency in French teachers and then promoting it actively, not in schools but also in the active life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all this background with us, and we look forward to talk in future, particularly to evaluate how far the project 2050 minus 50 it's working up. Once again, folks from around the world, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for tuning in and enjoying this part of our social change discussion on the subject of drawing a contrast between monolingualism and multilingualism. So, on this note, before we wrap it up, folks, let me still ask Emmanuel to give us his last word, and then we can wrap it up.
Thank you so much, Doc. I would like to say a very big thank you to you and your team for hosting me. And then I would also like to extend that gratitude to all the listeners across the group. Would be glad to have a support from any French-speaking country or any individual who feels it will be of help to us. We are ready to collaborate. And I would also like to give a shout out to the entire Sufi family, my family. They have been supportive. And then the president and his team have done well by making sure Ghana moves into this bilingualism agenda. And the agenda 2050-50, I'm sure it's on good course. And so all those who listened with due attention, those who asked their questions, I'm sure they have addressed their questions. And if they feel not satisfied, they can connect to us on Facebook, Français pour tous ou Ghana, because it is in Ghana for now. And of course, we are looking forward to transcending into the rest of the West African Commonwealth countries in order to make our mission attainable. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you so much. God bless you, Emmanuel, for your time. And folks, I am sure you have learned something new. And guess what? It's not only just about the language, but the neuro part of it, which is more of importance. You guys know I'm a doctor, so when it comes anything around the area of neurosciences, it is my area of interest. And so learning different languages clearly suggests that your cognitive mind will have to be switched left from right and right from right and right from left in order for you to be able to process. And so on that note, folks, I wish you all the best, and I ask that you continue to enhance yourself and become a bilingual, and that in itself will help you to become a better person. Yep.
Doc,
Yes, please.
just a minute. I want to know the capacity of our listeners this time during our show. Have we had
Yes.
a good number?
Yes, we've actually had a good number listened to. In fact, we had 19,918 people who were on with us, and so it's a blessing that this have actually reached out to a larger audience. We were expecting 20,000, but 19,000 is it's a whole number. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
It's a whole number by itself.
Thank you,
of
Deb.
which we are
Thank you,
grateful to
Deb.
the Lord for this
Mm,
opportunity. So, folks,
mm.
enjoy the piece of music. Our next show will come on in the next 1 hour. Just now, enjoy some good music whilst I speak with Emmanuel of air. God bless all of you for your support. Enjoy the rest of your evening with your families, wherever you find yourself.
Welcome to Weekend Night Live, hosted by Samuel Jacobs Abbey, where we play music, talk shows, and interviews on Be Inspired Podcast Network. Stay tuned and keep your dial on www.beinspiredpodcast.com. Don't forget to stay connected, be inspired, be unique, and be different.